Hi, everybody, and welcome back to the fourth episode of the Hunt the Wild podcast. Today I'm here with Ethan Gooch. He's a former intern for the hunting public, and he also has a YouTube channel as well. So, Ethan, how are you doing?
I'm good. Thanks for having me on.
Yeah, thanks for taking the time, man. I'm sure you're very busy. I see all your YouTube uploads, and I know that can be a lot of work.
Yeah, but no, I'm more than happy to do podcasts. I like talking to people and meeting new people, so it's all good.
Cool. Can you tell everybody a little bit about yourself, and we'll get into maybe some whitetail stuff.
Yeah, absolutely. This is fun because I have a YouTube channel named GoochieTv. I would say the majority of our stuff, or the stuff we try to post the most, is waterfowl hunting. But I haven't. It's not waterfowl season. It starts this weekend, so the past two podcasts, I was on two podcasts before this, and they were all asking about waterfowl hunting. So it'll be cool to talk about deer hunting because I was ready for a little bit of a switch. But yeah, I'm from Northeast Missouri, born and raised in the town of Kirksville. Go to school at Truman State University. I study ag science with a minor in business. I'm a senior, so I got one more year left. I graduate in May, and yeah, I grew up hunting in Northeast Missouri. My dad and grandpa both hunted. Kind of pretty typical story, just went with them. And then got real into waterfowl hunting probably when I was 14 or 15. And then been deer hunting and, whatever we can hunt, we hunt since then. So yeah, that's a little bit about me.
What's the first thing you ever hunted? Was it like small game, like typical, like everybody else, or was it waterfowl? You remember?
I think the first thing I ever probably went on was a duck hunt. We have my grandpa and my dad built a big pontoon duck blind, and so we used to drive out there and eat breakfast. We hardly ever shot any ducks, but that was like my first experience with hunting. And then I transitioned into deer hunting. I've never really done a whole lot of small game hunting, but deer hunting mostly until I got into waterfowl when I was like 14 or 15.
Usually you don't hear about people, at least where I'm from, their first hunt being some kind of waterfowl. It's usually squirrels or something like that.
Yeah.
But because I know that can be a lot of work for, if you're a little kid too. But
yeah, luckily my dad and grandpa did most of the work. I just went out there and sat.
Ate all the food.
That's right.
I know Indiana's going to open up October 1st for whitetails, and I only live about 10 minutes from Kentucky, so their season opened last weekend. So I kind of I know a couple people follow this podcast that are from Kentucky, so I want to dive into a little bit of early season scouting and kind of your thoughts and tactics on that.
Yeah, sure. I can kind of talk about two different things. Contrary to what people may know, when I never really had hunted a whole lot of public land for deer before the hunting public. We hunted a lot of turkeys on public land, and then a lot of our waterfowl hunts actually in Missouri happen on public land. So when I was with the hunting public, obviously we hunted 98% public land. Tactics can be different there, and it was all new to me. Stuff that I didn't really focus on. Personally, I'll talk about private ground here at least. We open up next Wednesday, so the 15th of September. Obviously, there's like two things I focus on early season. Water doesn't seem to be a big deal this year. It's not super hot, although I did see some deer at water midday today. I was scouting on public ground, but yeah, the main things I focus on, my dad and grandpa own several hundred acres here. So they're in soybeans right now. And I mean, pretty typical. We've got several stands that are on soybeans. I don't know if they're going to stick to that pattern. The main thing I learned about soybeans when I was with the hunting public is about as soon as you start seeing them turn yellow, the deer will turn off of them. I'd never really paid attention to that. My dad farms and I farm. I would like to farm too. So I obviously knew that happened, but never really focused on it. But once the leaves start falling off, the beans dry up and they're just not nearly as palatable. Deer don't like them as much. So be paying attention to that, I guess, is the main thing. A lot of people think the deer just change their pattern because hunting season happens. I think a lot of it's just the food source is not nearly as high quality when it's going from that stage of green to yellow. So pay attention to that. The main thing I'll transition to now, hunting if the beans aren't hot, which I almost always hunt beans or like a green field the first couple of nights just to see if I can get lucky on something that, you know. But if that pattern hasn't held, I usually immediately try to find, if I haven't located some already, the first acorns that are dropping. Another really stereotypical thing, but it's pretty easy to find, obviously, acorns on the ground, but a big concentration of acorns. And the other thing, too, that we found, it seems like there's quite a few acorns this year, but when I was with the hunting public, something that I really had never realized was like looking at the ground where the acorns are. You can almost always tell if there's been deer in there. If the ground's churned up, a lot of times the leaves will be all ruffled. It looks like turkey scratching, basically. Yep. But that's a big deal, something that I'd never really paid attention to. It's easy to find acorns, but trying to find the acorns the deer are using is something that, is obviously the hard part. But I like to do, obviously, hunt over acorns is one thing. Another thing I really like to do is just hunt the transition from food. When I was with the hunting public, we hunted a lot directly over oaks, but I like to hunt them to and from, food source, whether that be beans or beans or acorns. But a lot of people don't think deer will move like in the morning, but I hunt a lot of mornings early season, and I just get real close to where they're bedding. And it's kind of a high risk, high reward strategy, but I've had a lot of trouble like on the edge of a field or right next to an acorn tree. A lot of times the deer are already there when you get there, or they're getting there right as you're climbing out and you're busting them. So, sorry, my roommate's coming in.
It's all good.
But I like to hunt the transition, try to be closer to bedding. That's the biggest thing I learned when I was with the hunting public, was just like pushing their bedding. And it's a little bit different on public ground. That's kind of why I was talking about the difference. On public ground, you kind of got to be high risk a lot of times if there's any amount of pressure at all. So we push their bedding pretty hard, especially in areas where we're only going to be there for 5 days. We try to get as close to where we thought they were bedding as possible. And you're going to blow some deer out sometimes, but bedding is, everything all times of the year, but it can be really good in early season. And it was just like stuff that I'd never realized. We would just go into an area and blow out a bunch of deer, and then 3 days later we'd go back in there and set up right on their bedding. And like a lot of times that was our best hunt. So I'd say push your comfort zone. If you're on public land, you can push the limits a little bit. It's not your ground or your deer, and somebody else is going to get it if you don't. So
yeah, somebody else is definitely pushing them around too.
Yeah.
Are you are you usually like early season? Are you setting up right on the edge of a field? You said the first couple of days if you're hunting beans. Are you a little bit inside the woods?
Yeah, that's an interesting question. I would say in my past, before I was with the hunting public, I would always be right on the edge. Obviously now, if you know where they're coming out or you know where they often are, I try to get a little bit closer to their bedding so that they come out, I can see them before dark. That's the other thing too. A lot of times deer aren't nocturnal. You just have your camera in a spot that they're going to be nocturnal in. So this is all pretty common sense stuff, so I don't want to bore anybody, but if you're only getting nocturnal pictures, you need to figure out where they're coming from, obviously, and move closer to that, because deer move during the day. Like I was out on public land today. It's 90 degrees, and I saw 2 deer just out milling around. Deer move a lot during the day, so move closer to the bedding. But yeah, now I would say I'm a lot close. I try to push a little bit closer to where I think they're coming from. A lot of times you can set them up for a shot a lot easier than being right on the edge. The other thing I was going to say is, like, I've got a deer scouted up right outside of my house on beans, so it's funny that we're talking about this, but like the first 2 nights, I'm probably just going to sit right on the edge of the bean fields on the ground. Like, I never realized you could do that, but I'm probably going to sit 30 yards from the trail. I think he's coming out, and just going to sit on the ground. So I don't know. There's stuff that I never realized you could do that I learned from him that had pretty good success. So
Is there a reason why you choose to just to hunt on the ground in that situation, just to kind of limit some of the noise and stuff? Or
yeah, I would say the noise is a big deal. And then the other thing too is like the trees I'm presented with, I don't have very good hide. And that's like the biggest problem I've seen on the edge of a bean field is, or edge of any field, edge of anything, it's hard to hide. And it's hard to find a tree that's perfect within range. That's the coolest thing. Like the thing I always hated about deer hunting was like how regimented it was. And you had to go sit in this spot and you had to sit in this stand. And, but now it's like, if you sit on the ground, you can find a lot of places to sit on the ground. So, I really like sitting on the ground now, and it's something I'm looking forward to doing next Wednesday.
The mobile game has definitely changed it up. I
Yeah.
mean, people for years would just go sit in the same stand multiple times, sit and sit and sit, and it's just kind of like getting lucky. But yeah, I've gotten into a little bit more mobile hunting myself, and I enjoy it a lot more. I get tired of staring at the same tree.
Absolutely. Yeah, it changed the game for me. I mean, I always deer hunted. I always like had fun deer hunting, but if there was anything else to do, I would go do that. That was hunting related. And now it's just like, I still like other stuff better. I'm not going to lie to anybody, but I like moving around, you know, pushing deer's limits. And I'm not a guy that really cares about deer a whole lot. So if I spook one, it's not that big of a deal. But I just like pushing their limits a little bit. And, okay, I'm bored of this spot, I'm going to move 100 yards closer. I don't know. It's just changed the game. Like you said, it's a lot of fun.
So I'm in a bit of a situation, so maybe you can give me some advice on this. So an area that I hunt, and these deer transition to these acorns, there's tons and tons and tons of acorns. So it's kind of hard to key in on where they're going to be at when there's, you know, hundreds and hundreds of trees, acorns dropping. What
Absolutely.
do you do like in that situation? How would you approach that? Are you looking for more like scrapes and rubs as well, or?
Yeah, that's a good question. I would say too, like right now, that's something I excluded, but if you can find a scrape like right now within the next 20 days, I mean, it's like, I mean, it's not guaranteed you're going to kill deer, obviously, but it's really high odds. Like the scrapes right now are not all the scrapes are established, just the ones that are going to be the most used, or the ones that they're using right now. And so, if you can find a scrape right now, it's awesome. And that's what I was going to say about where deer are feeding. A lot of times this time of year, the first rubs start appearing and your first scrapes start appearing. And if you can find a rub, a scrape, and, you know, the ground churned up where there's acorns, you're in the right spot. The other thing I would say is, the cool thing is if you can find acorns, or you can find an area where there's acorns, it's relatively easy to look at a map and try to figure out where they're coming from. A lot of times, at least back in Missouri, where there's acorns, obviously there's a lot of acorns, and it's pretty contiguous. It looks all the same. As soon as it goes to change, it's probably where the deer's coming from. They like to, I mean, they're going to bed pretty close to where they're eating. So that was the big thing. We talked about with the hunting public, and like one thing I learned was that deer are edge creatures, obviously, whether that's the edge of a field or the edge of thick and open in the woods. If you can get right where it opens up from the thick, there's probably a good chance that there's going to be deer in there if you find other sign. That the main thing, the main hunt I'm thinking of is like Ted's Iowa buck. I don't know if you watched that one, but it was the exact same situation. First day of Iowa, October 1st, we found acorns. We found where the ground was turned up. We pushed really close to where it was thick. You could literally just see like a line of brush in the trees where it got thick and the acorn stopped. And sure enough, we saw that buck stand up and walk 100 yards right to where he was feeding. So
what are you guys looking for, or what would you be looking for? I use OnX a lot. I'm sure a lot of people do now. Like if you're looking at a map, what kind of like features are you trying to key in on maybe?
Yeah, that's a good question. I use OnX too, so I don't really have experience with other stuff. But a lot of times, if we're talking about acorns in specifically, deer almost always bed. Like, I don't even know how to describe it, but if you can find the top line of a ridge, they're almost always on the second line or the third line of the ridge. It's just like they want to be in a spot where the wind can blow over their back, they can smell everything that's behind them, and they can see everything below them. And so it's hard to, to talk about, but a lot of times, if you have a ridge, I don't even know how to show it. If you have a ridge, a deer is going to bed along with the wind, where the wind will be at his back. So if there's a wind this way, a deer is going to sit on this side of the ridge. Everything that's on the ridge, he can smell with the wind blowing over his back, and he can see everything that's down the bottom. So, 9 times out of 10, deer are going to bed right along that topo line, right at the edge of the ridge, if we're talking about open hardwoods, which is kind of where we are. Mm-hmm. So that was what we, playing the wind on a ridge, I guess, would be the thing that we talk about the most, and trying to figure out. I know a good resource for this, and what I watched a lot while I was with the hunting public, is the Hunting Beast. I don't know if you watch him on YouTube, but he has some excellent, they're not the most entertaining videos by any means, but if you want to learn about how to scout deer and then how to look at a map and figure out where a deer is bedding, the Hunting Beast on YouTube is by far the best. And they might be 50 minutes long, but he's got videos that are just map breakdowns. He's got videos where he's out in the woods actually showing stuff, some really cool, interesting stuff that I'd never known about deer. So
I'm kind of running into the ridge situation, because it's my second season, I think, second or third in Kentucky, and I'm so used to hunting just right across the river. It's so flat here in Indiana, and then as soon as you get into Kentucky, it's like totally different. And I'm running into kind of these ridges and all these acorns now, and I just kind of wanted to see what your thoughts were on how to kind of key in on them a little bit.
Absolutely. And one other thing I would talk about too is, and something other people don't, I guess it doesn't get talked about a whole lot, and I'm certainly not an expert on this, and I can't exactly explain why it happens, but one thing you really need to focus on when you're in really rolling terrain, or you're in an area with a lot of ridges, is your thermals. And especially, if you have a wind, and I don't know the exact measurements, but if you have a wind that's pretty calm, I'd say less than 5 miles an hour, towards dark, your wind, your scent is going to go straight down to the bottom. It's just the way it works. As the air cools, it's going to sink to the lower part of the ridge. So we would push limits as far as our wind goes, knowing that, the last hour of dark is probably when we're going to see deer. And it's the time where our thermals are going to be pretty consistent. So unless you've got a real strong, consistent wind, thermals, can tell you everything you need to know about how your wind's going to act. So same thing in the morning. It's just opposite. Your wind's going to go up. Your thermals are going to rise in the morning. So your wind or your smell is going to go up the ridge in the morning as the air heats up. So that was stuff I never knew going into it, but stuff that was cool, because I wouldn't hunt days that with super calm winds, because it would swirl. But a lot of times you can get a pretty consistent pull down or pull up if you're in some pretty rolling terrain. So
yeah, it's nice to hear about thermals. The last couple of years, I've heard a lot about thermals, but I'd say probably 10, 12, 15 years ago, I never heard anything about it. I don't know if it's maybe just I never heard it, or if it just wasn't out there, but yeah, it's definitely interesting. So if you were going to go in, I know you guys traveled a lot when you're with the hunting public. If you're going to go into a new piece of ground and you only had a couple days, maybe a week off work, some guys maybe take a week off and go, how would you approach that? Pretty aggressively, I would say, or?
Yeah. We do a ton with our phones, like with OnX, and it takes some practice, and it takes some learning. I'm not that good at it, but I was really impressed. I told tons of people, the guys at the hunting public have done it enough that they can look at a map and, they can pick out good areas. And that's what I would tell people is go out and scout an area. And this isn't for this exact question you talked, but go out and scout an area and pick out points that are high in deer sign, and then mark it on your map and try to follow the pattern of that. And those guys at the hunting public, they can look at a map and they can see and rule out areas that they don't think would be great. And that was what saved us so much time. And something they got asked a bunch while I was there was, how do you make the most out of a 5-day trip? And I would say, you've got ample amount of time when you're sitting at home to look at the map. If anything, the thing I would say is just look at the map and make yourself familiar with what the area looks like, so you're not driving around in the car for a day trying to get your bearings. That's what I did the most, because I wasn't that good at reading a map, and I'm still not great at reading a map. But that's what I would say is, if you've got ground you hunt at home and you can, try to figure out what areas are the best and then try to translate it there and look at the map, look for similarities. That's the main thing. And then once you kind of have some areas picked out, okay, this might be good, this might be good. I got a stand, or I got a spot that might be good for this wind or whatever. Then go out and scout and look. And if there's deer sign, then, it's probably a decent spot. If you can confirm, if you can look at a map and say, I think that'd be a decent spot, and then you go in and find sign, there's obviously deer using it, and it's a confidence booster for sure to know that, you picked out a good spot, and then you went and there was confirmed by the deer sign. So
do you feel like observation sets are good on those kind of trips, or you think it's kind of like burning time? How do you feel about that? Like taking the first day and doing an observation set, or do you just go all in? And
yeah, I don't know. That's an interesting question. When we were out west, we did a lot of that. We never called it an observation set. We were always ready to make something happen. But I don't think they're a waste of time. I think, in fact, you can probably save yourself some time by doing it. Getting an idea of how deer are moving in the area, trying to set up closer to an area than you might have just going in there on a whim. The one thing I would say for sure that is a good practice is, if you're going to do an observation sit, try to sit in an area that you think, there might be deer, because, you never know when just looking for deer could turn into a deer hunt. And that happened a lot. There'd be times where, there's a deer out there 200 yards. Okay, well then let's just get closer to it and try to get in front of it. So that's what I'd say. An observation set's not a bad thing, but if you're on a 5-day hunt and you think, I need to make this happen in 5 days, try to make your observation sit. If you want to sit back, try to make it to where you can still make a play on a deer if you see one, or you think a deer might come through there. Just try to put yourself in a high probability spot instead of just completely putting yourself out of the game.
Do you feel like pushing pretty far in is always the best option when you're hunting public, or do you feel like a lot of the spots near the parking lot and stuff are overlooked?
Yeah, that's a good question. I don't have like a for sure answer, but I can tell you, and that's the thing I think about a lot, is if you've heard a lot of people talk about doing something, it's probably happening most places you're trying. So, if I hear a ton about people oh, I'm going to walk 2 miles in. It's like, okay, well, you walking 2 miles in, you might not be in an area that's good. And that's what we talked about a lot with the hunting public is pick spots on the map you think are good, and don't necessarily concern yourself with how many people are there, or how far it is from the nearest access, or, oh, they got to drive a boat down here. Obviously, all that stuff adds to, the probability that it's going to be good. But any area that looks good, that you think there's deer sign, it's probably good. And that's the other thing I would say. The biggest thing I learned while I was there was, if there's sign, there are deer. And set up on the sign. It doesn't matter how stupid it seems. There are some spots that you would just be like, there should never be a deer here. There should never be a buck here. And sure enough, there's a buck there. So, I remember when we were in Tennessee, 2 of the deer we killed were right off the bank and in just super small chunks of woods, places you would never assume there'd be a decent deer. So, yeah, I would just say if there's sign, then you should set up on it.
Something I've noticed that seems the area that I hunt it's I guess semi-public, you got to buy a pass. It's like $100 a year, and
Yeah.
they pretty much anybody can buy a pass, but they only allow like 200 or 300 guys on it. But something I've noticed is seems like the further I go back, and I think I'm like by myself or whatever, I get more pictures of guys on camera than I do when I'm closer to the truck.
Yeah.
And I think it's because everybody wants to push away from everybody. And sometimes I wonder if the deer land, up on the ridge looking down at my truck and watching everybody walk in far while they're living, the high life right next to the road.
I think that's true. And like, all that stuff is good, useful tools. A lot of times on an out of state trip, we would just drive around. I said, don't drive around for 5 hours, but a lot of times we just drive around for a couple hours and see where people were. That'll tell you more than anything where their car's parked. So you can rule out some spots really quickly by just doing a hot lap and being like, okay, there's 5 cars at this entrance. I'm not even going to screw with that. Another spot that you're like, I don't know if that looks great on the map, and there weren't any people in there. Well, that might be decent. And that's the other thing I would say too, like difference with the public land stuff is if there's an area that doesn't have a lot of pressure, and the rest of the area has pressure, deer are going to go away from the pressure no matter what the habitat's like. Now, that's not always 100% true, but, obviously try to go where the people aren't, but you don't always have to walk 2 miles, from the car to get that. You can get it where you're 300 yards from the access too. So just go where the people aren't.
I walked in, I've got a camera that's back about a mile, and I haven't been getting a whole lot of deer pictures, but I've been getting more, people pictures. And I went the other night after work to pull a camera that was only about 200 or 300 yards from the road. And I walked in, and it's season in Kentucky now, but I was just going to pull a card real quick. And I walked in and I saw a pretty nice buck, and I was less than 100 yards from my truck. So I snuck back to my truck and grabbed my bow, and he had made his way up over this ridge, and I'm watching him, and about 50, 60 yards, and another one comes out, another nice one. And I got about 40 yards from him, but I didn't have a shot, and I spooked him, but I was fairly close to the road. So now I'm kind of wondering if maybe everybody's pushing in those other deep spots, and maybe I'll just stay by the truck. It might be easier to drag them out that way.
I mean, that'd be sweet. Yeah. But, that's the thing too, is like, that's what we always talk about. Like, if you don't have to walk in 3 miles, don't walk in 3 miles. It's just going to make your hunt, a little bit harder.
Yeah. Especially this time of year, it's 90 degrees outside. And
that's right.
Oh man. How do you, we kind of covered this a little bit, but how do you adjust to people? I mean, if you pull up to a parking lot and there's a car there, are you leaving or?
Yeah. A lot of times, I mean, I try to talk to everybody we see. I think that's just a good practice, and, it's nobody's land. So trying to talk to people, not being a jerk, I guess, is the best thing to do, but talking to people, trying to figure out where they're going. And then, like I said, I mean, the main thing we found was just like, look where their cars are. Where there's cars, there's going to be people. Sometimes you don't have the option to get away from people, but, the cars are a telltale sign that somebody's in there, and we try to avoid the cars as much as possible.
Yeah. We're not really mid-September yet, but a lot of people will start hitting it pretty hard in October. As far as like the Midwest or whatever, what's kind of your perfect setup? What are you doing in October, on public or private? Are you mainly targeting like acorns and stuff still, or?
Yeah. I would say a lot of it transitions to, acorns, hunting rubs, hunting scrapes. That was a thing I learned a lot at the hunting public was, hunting scrapes. I'd never done that a lot in big woods, but like you said, it can be hard to try to pinpoint where a deer is in a place that's full of acorns. Scrapes tell you a lot. A lot of times you can find multiple scrapes. If there's multiple scrapes, there's probably a good probability that there's, a decent amount of deer there. So I hunt a lot of acorns in October. Another thing I really like to do, this isn't on public, but a cut cornfield in October, like 3 days after it's cut. I mean, you can't beat it really. You might have 10 deer on the whole property all season. You probably have 30, the 3 to 5 days after it's cut. I don't know, something about corn that they like. So I like to target those areas. In fact, that's probably my favorite place to hunt in October, is just wait until I get a cold night and go to a cornfield that's been cut. Luckily, I have the opportunity that I can hunt on some areas that there's corn. But yeah, those are my two main setups. Waterfowl kind of kicks off there in October, so I just go out when I can, and I don't push the deer too hard. Usually just wait till November until I really get going. But we killed some awesome deer in October and with the hunting public, and I would say acorns. And then if you do have crops on public land, which we do here in Missouri, I always take note of what field, like what the field's planted in, because it'll give you a good idea of whether or not there's going to be a fresh cut cornfield on public land or not. So
something I've always wanted to do is hunt a cornfield as it's being harvested. Have you ever had the opportunity to do that?
Yeah, I've done that multiple times right outside my house. Like I said, my dad farms a little bit, so I've done that twice. I've never killed one like while he was harvesting it, but it doesn't affect the deer, at least to my knowledge. I've never hunted like the actual field, but you can hear the combine going and everything. I don't think it bothers them. I've never really, I've seen deer in a cornfield while it's being cut, but a lot of times they're coming to the cornfield and then the combine shuts off and they get out there. But I almost killed a deer last year in the morning in October. The combine wasn't on yet, but it had been going the whole day before, and it was going to be, and they were out there. So I don't really think that affects them. Obviously, I like to hunt it. So
they grow up accustomed to that. I guess
Absolutely.
They get used to that sound, and it's already shucked and on the ground for them. They don't have to do
they
a
like
lot
that.
of work. Do you still you hunt more private now, but what was your setup when you're with the hunting public, as far as like your sticks and your stand or your saddle? What do you kind of go for? Like, how do you choose what to get for weight and stuff like that? Like, can you kind of like explain to people? I know there's a ton of different products out there as far as stands and sticks.
Yeah.
Where does a guy know where to start?
Man, I'm not the best at, I don't know all the gear, unfortunately. We obviously use the tethered system for the saddle and the stand. I really liked it, but it's certainly not the only thing that works. I've hunted out of a lone wolf multiple times. I've really liked them. If you're a bigger guy that has big feet, I really like those if you're more of a conventional tree stand guy, but they can get kind of expensive, but they're light. And that's the one thing I would say. I'm not that versed on equipment, unfortunately, but the one thing I would say is you don't have to you don't have to pin yourself in a corner as far as your hunting type. But if you know you're not going to walk 2 miles, then you probably don't need something that's super light. A lot of the stuff that's lighter gets really expensive. And, I see guys spending $400 to shed 4 ounces of weight. So you kind of got to be, I don't know. I see people get in this rat race of like, oh, I got the lightest thing, or I can climb the highest in the tree with 4 sticks or stuff like that. Decide what works for you and be confident in that. There's no one thing that's going to be the best. I've used, what are those called? Wild Edge tree steps. They're with a rope. I've used like actual tree steps. They like latch into the tree. That's what Jake uses a lot.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't like those a whole lot. I like the conventional sticks. Tethered has their own sticks now. They're good and extremely light and durable, but I know everyone doesn't have $150 for one stick or whatever they cost. So
yeah, it kind of just depends on it. Everybody's situation's different. You may be walking 100 yards, or you may be walking 3 miles. So I guess,
and that's what I would say is just like, if you're not gonna walk, like those guys walk. We might walk 3 or 4 miles a day, like on average. So it's important that it's light. But if you're gonna do that once a week and you've got all day to do it, or there's gonna be a couple weekends a year you're going deer hunting. Well, you're going deer hunting, and it's gonna be a little bit harder, but it's not. It's not that big of a deal. So I would be careful with the amount of money you spend, because it seems like there's always something lighter or always something that's more compact. And, if it works, it works. So
I think it sometimes, like newer hunters too, they get caught up in all that. They think they got to spend, $2,000 or $3,000 to get a stand and all this stuff set up. I mean, you can pretty much you can kill a deer pretty much with anything. You
that's
just got to
right.
be you may just be more weight and you might sweat a little more, but
Yeah, that's right. That's the thing. I mean, I don't know how many, but we killed more bucks off the ground than we did in saddle last year. I think. I could be wrong, but I'm pretty sure. And so, like, I don't know. I like just going out and sitting on the ground. I literally grab my bow and I grab my camera and I go sit down. Like, there's nothing that frustrated me more when I was with the hunting public, when we were like trying to set up. I mean, we have to do it, but you have to set up 2 stands and get your stick set and then get in there. Then you got to get your camera arm on there. It's just like, sometimes I just want to go out and sit on the ground and deer hunt. Like, I don't care that much about being up in a tree. It'd be cooler if I killed it off the ground probably anyway. So that's why I like hunting off the ground so much.
the mobile hunting itself gets a little cumbersome, and then when you throw camera arms and all that camera gear and thousands of dollars worth of equipment into it can be a lot.
That's right.
If you forget one piece of equipment, or
You ruin your day.
did you like sitting in a saddle? I've never actually hunted out of a saddle. Are they pretty comfortable?
I loved it. I didn't mind it at all. I'm probably 6 foot, maybe 5'11", 190 pounds, pretty average guy, and it was really comfortable for me. We didn't have any like big guys really that I knew sit in them, but everyone said they're comfortable. I think they're comfortable. I like it more than a tree stand because I can move around, and like I get frustrated sitting in a tree stand, just, kind of getting jittery. I mean, you can probably see how much I move in this video. I don't like sitting still. So, I like, being able to move around the tree, adjust what's going on, but the saddle's not for everybody. I mean, it's, you feel like you're going to fall off the tree quite a bit. I mean, just the nature of the beast. It's like you feel like you're going to fall out of it sometimes. You're not. It's very safe. In fact, it's probably as safe or safer than a conventional tree stand, but it's not for everybody. And the platform, they have the XL platform now, but the platform is kind of small, and it can be hard to get adjusted to. And then you got to shoot your bow out of them. That's the other thing too, is like shooting the bow it's an adjustment. Like it's way different than being able to stand up in a tree stand, get your feet set and shoot your bow. When you're in the saddle, you got your tether, and it can be more complicated. It's not like you can't get it figured out, but
yeah, it's something I was going to ask you if it's pretty difficult to shoot out of, because I know that can be different. When you hunting out of a stand for the past 20 years and then you go to sit in one of those, I'm sure it's a lot different.
Yeah, it's not too hard. In fact, you probably have more shot opportunities out of the saddle if you're willing to push your comfort zone a little bit. You can move around the tree. I like that portion of it, like especially running a camera. You can only go so far in a conventional tree stand before you were worried you might fall out. But that, I mean, you can literally just like swing all the way around the tree. So that part's nice, but it is an adjustment to shoot out of.
So I know you said you're more into waterfowl, but as far as deer hunting, what's something you'd want to improve on this year? Just in your own personal deer hunting?
Absolutely. Probably the biggest thing for me is just like slowing down and not being so aggressive, especially here on private ground. Like we only have so much area we can hunt, and if you blow a deer out a couple times, it's probably not going to come back, or you're probably going to limit your opportunities. And this happens every year. It's probably going to happen again this year because I don't get too wrapped up in it. But I mean, I'll push the limits pretty hard the first week, and then a lot of times, it's October, November until I start seeing those deer again. So I would like to slow down and be a little bit more reserved as far as the other thing too is like I don't just deer hunt. I deer hunt like on opportunity. So it could be 90 degrees in October and I'll go sit in a deer stand and probably not see a deer. And that was something I would really like to get better at, because I'm like, oh, well, I'm hunting. It's better than editing a video or better than doing homework. And it's like, there's no point in me going out. Not to say you can't kill one when it's 95 degrees in October, but I find myself wasting a lot of time in a tree stand for literally no reason besides the fact that I just don't want to do other stuff. So I would really prefer I don't do that this year.
It's better than sitting in the house sometimes, even if you are sweating to death.
Yeah, that's exactly right.
You think that's going to be a hard adjustment, trying to, after being with those guys and doing all that running and gunning, you think it's going to be hard for you to go in and just like set up and be, it's got to be so chill after doing all that.
Yeah, it is. I don't know. It's weird too, because like, I don't know, hunting with those guys was so much fun. And like you always had a cameraman when you were with you. So like you could just worry about hunting, and you knew the person that was running the camera was really proficient with it. So it's going to be a change of pace. Like, I don't know exactly what it's going to look like. I've told everybody, honestly, I don't know how much I'm going to deer hunt this year. I mean, I'll go out and deer hunt, but I'm not sure how much I'm going to go. I'm sure I'll go a lot. I always end up going a lot, but after doing that, it's just like, I don't know. Like, I don't want to, it sucks now knowing that like, if I had a week on an area, I could probably kill a deer, and I just don't have that time anymore as far as like traveling to new places. Like I would like to take it. I'm sure I will in the following years, but this year's pretty booked. But I would like to take a trip with them and just like do what we did again, because that was fun.
Yeah, you miss it.
Yeah, it was a lot of fun.
What's a major mistake either last year or just in the years prior that you felt like you used to make when you hunted deer that you kind of have learned from?
Yeah. I know I already talked about this. It's going to be a real short and simple answer, but just setting up on sign. I sat so many times in a tree stand and there was absolutely no sign around, just hoping and praying for a deer. And then there's been times I've walked right past sign because I'm convinced in my mind that another area is better than this area. It's like, I don't know how to simply put it, but all I'm going to say is if there's sign, set up on it. If there's not sign, go find sign and set up on it, because where there's sign, there's going to be deer.
I know I'm guilty of this, and I'm sure other people are too. I used to, since I've started trying to be more mobile, I used to go in, I'd set up, early season on a field edge on public or semi-public or whatever, and it would never pay off. And I would sit it and I'd be like, I'll just keep sitting it and eventually it'll pay off, but it never does.
No.
So you use OnX a lot. I know they got a ton of different like markers and ways to map stuff out. What's one way that you use, or some like tricks you use to stay organized on that?
That's a good question. I haven't scouted deer since I was there, but one thing we really like to do on areas that they've been to before, just switch the color, switch it to something that's more recent. And I like to do the year by color. So, if last year was purple, then this year's yellow. And it's cool to see. You can go back and hit like areas that were hot last year at this time. That's the other thing too, is like naming your waypoints, I think is really critical, because like I'm certainly a victim of it, but I'll put a waypoint there and then I'll look back in 2 months and I won't have any idea why the waypoint, what was the purpose of it. So if you can take 2 seconds to just name the waypoint, like this was hot last October, or acorns are dropping, or whatever it may be. I like to name the waypoint for sure. And then the color by year is critical, because then, if you've got 2 or 3 years of, continual sign, continual sightings, or whatever it may be, then that's awesome. The other thing too, which I don't know if people necessarily know, but you can take pictures and add up to your waypoints. That's super cool. Something that I think is awesome. Whether it's like finding a specific spot or, trying to familiarize yourself with the area or whatever it may be. I don't know what all you could use a picture for. There's infinite possibilities of what might be an advantage, but yeah, I like to add pictures to the waypoints just and when I'm trying to be organized.
That's something. Yeah, that's something I was going to ask you about. I just learned a few months ago that you could add pictures on there. I'm sure it's
Yeah.
probably been on there forever, but
Yeah.
it's I think you scroll all the way to the bottom, and I'd never like really scrolled all the way to the bottom. I'd always just mark like scrape or something and maybe put a date in. But yeah, I think pictures, yeah, it can be very helpful.
Yeah, it's cool too. Like, this isn't really to help you, but it's cool too to be able to look back like on areas and like see what stuff looked like then. And I don't know, one thing I like to do too is, like, we did some on public ground. If you'd hang it, like if you're only out on a 5-day trip and you hang a camera and you get pictures off your camera and you get it to your phone, then you can put the pictures of the deer in that area, in that waypoint. And then, next year you come back, okay, this deer was here. I don't know. It's just cool to look at.
I think it's good to have data built. It's a good place to store a lot of your data, because a lot of that stuff, like, guys will track it for a couple months and then it'll just fall off, and they'll have pictures on their phone or whatever, but they'll get deleted by next season, or the notes get deleted or lost. But if it's in OnX, I mean, it's probably going to be there unless you get rid of the app. Yeah,
that's right.
What do you have planned for the fall? You mostly doing waterfowl stuff, or?
I don't really have a ton of deer stuff planned. I mean, I'm going to hunt here, obviously some. But let's see. This weekend, teal season opens here, so we'll do that. And then next week, I'm going to Arkansas to film an alligator hunt, so that'll be super cool.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. And then the following weekend, at the end of September, I'm going to New York for 3 days with the guys from Dive Bomb, their decoy company, to film a goose hunt in New York. So those are kind of the 3 trips this month, I guess, that I got planned. I'm not really sure after that. I'm going to be in Arkansas for 3 or 4 weeks in December and January, filming some waterfowl hunts down there, and got a trip to North Dakota planned, a goose hunt. But I'm not going to take any out-of-state deer hunts, probably, unfortunately. I may deer hunt some while I'm in Arkansas filming waterfowl hunts, but I don't know. That I love doing that, but I would be lying if I said like I could take a break from it too. Like, I love doing that, but I don't want that to ever be misconstrued. But like,
probably nice to settle down a little bit.
Yeah, you do enough of any one type of thing. Like, it just, I don't know. It's good to have a little bit of switch up.
Do you mostly, like, if you go out now, I know you're big on YouTube, do you take somebody with you to film, or what's that?
Yeah, I find myself filming. I mean, I don't know. I find myself filming a lot of waterfowl hunts. Like, I like filming, so I don't have a problem. I film 90% of the videos probably that are posted on the channel. But I've got 2 buddies, one that lives with me and one that goes to school close by, that help film. They both know how to run a camera. So I'm sure like next week when I'm deer hunting, they'll be filming. But yeah, I've never gotten into self-filming deer hunts. In fact, I really dislike self-filming deer hunts. It's hard, and it's just always been more frustrating than it's been worth for me. If I could ever get one like perfectly on camera by myself, it would be awesome. But I've never been able to do it. I hate taking all the stuff in. I don't know. I just don't like that. So I either want to be filming or I want somebody to be filming me. And it's hard for people that don't have somebody to be interested in. Not everyone's interested in sitting and watching somebody else deer hunt. So
yeah,
it can be hard to get somebody to film you, but luckily
I started dabbling in that a little bit last year, self-filming deer hunts, and man, it's you can read everything online, but I mean, until you order, like, I've ordered camera arms and I'm like, this thing is junk. I got to get something lighter. So yeah, that can be just finding the right gear to use in itself is like a task. And then, 90-degree weather and packing in a stand and the camera arm and the camera and getting all set up and going an extra hour early to get set up. And yeah, I love it, but man, it can be cumbersome. What kind of camera are you, what kind of camera do you shoot?
I have both of them here, actually. That's funny you asked. So this is THP's old camera. This is a Panasonic, Panasonic Z105.
Okay.
It's huge. I film on this most of the time when I'm by myself. I like it because I can just set it on my shoulder. So if I'm just filming a hunt, that's mostly what I take out. This was the Hunting Public's old camera, and I bought it from him. And then my other camera I've got, which is more like if I was going to self film, I film hunts with it too. This is a Canon Vixia GX10.
Mm-hmm.
The Canon Vixia line is a good line. They make the Canon, RF 800, I think, is what I usually recommend people to get if they're getting into it. It's $800 or so. But Canon makes a good line of cameras that are relatively cheap and will do everything you want to do. And then I just ordered a mirrorless Sony. It's the brand new Sony A7S III. So it's going to do some really cool stuff. It will film 4K, 120 frames, so I can film slow motion 4K. Just a bunch of stuff you don't really need unless you're really into making videos, I guess. So yeah,
I had a Canon G30, and I got rid of it, and I went the DSLR route and got a Canon 90D.
Okay.
And now because I kind of wanted to do some photography stuff too, but now I'm kind of wishing I had the G40, so I'm kind of looking at that.
Yeah,
I kind of just want both, but it gets expensive. I like the photography camera or whatever too, but it's the zoom is tricky. It can be tricky to.
Yeah, that's what
they have their downfalls.
If you're just going out to film a hunt, you're not going to get nearly as good an image quality. And there's going to be times where you're like, God, this doesn't look like I want it to look. But a camcorder is the way to go. And once you learn, because what I see a lot of people do is like, which luckily you didn't make this mistake, I see a lot of people get like a DSLR first. And they're trickier, I think, than a camcorder to film on. And it's like, God, I can't even get this thing to spit out a picture, like a video I want. Like even if a deer's not coming in, I can't get this thing right. So I always tell people, get a $500, get a $800 camcorder and play with it. Video some hunts, decide if you like it or not. And then if you like it, then you can go the SLR route. I mean, it's been 2 years and I've filmed, I don't know how many videos before I finally decided I want a nice SLR and I'm going to spend the time to really learn how to do it. Now, if you're doing photography and video, it's good to have both. It's
good to have both, really.
It's always best to have both, but in a world where you're just trying to film hunts, I would always tell people to get a camcorder.
When you were filming for the Hunting Public, I kind of always wondered, are you carrying the camera up on your shoulder or do you have some kind of mount? How do you keep the footage so steady?
Yeah. So I get frustrated with a couple of my buddies. I never used anything. I just used my hand. And that's why I like this camera so much, because I literally just I can just sit like this and just like squeeze against my head and just focus on being still. And that's what I always tell people, like, you got to completely disconnect yourself from the hunt if you want it to be steady. Because if you start for a second, like looking past the camera, and I mean, it's good to get excited about stuff, obviously.
Yeah.
It's hard. You got to either be filming the hunt or you got to be like really, really actively involved in the hunt. And you can't do both because it's hard to stay steady. Now, the other guys use a shoulder rig. It's just called a shoulder rig.
Okay.
I don't know exactly the brand. I'd have to look it up. But yeah, if you just look up shoulder rig, it's just got one of the screw-in mounts, and you can keep stuff so steady. It just sits. The arm sits up on your like on your shoulder, and then the camera sits out here, so it goes down here, and then it comes out, and then the camera sits right here. So steady. Like you can be shaking and everything, and it just sits real still.
Are they pretty heavy, or is it like light?
Super padding? Light. I think it's made by Movo. I'll have to look. But yeah, if you look up shoulder rig, and that's for running and gunning and just like walking in, you can be like moving up and down. That's the cool thing about the shoulder rig. It'll move with your body, but like when you're walking and filming, you're doing this and going up and down. Mm-hmm. With the shoulder rig, it's just moving with your shoulder. So it keeps stuff really steady. I hated a shoulder. You'll find a trend. I hate like the least amount of stuff I can take in is what I want to take in. So I free-handed everything. But if you shake a lot, or if you just want steady footage, a shoulder rig is awesome. I think they're like $60, $70. They're not too expensive.
Do you use a GoPro quite a bit too?
I do, yeah. I found myself using the GoPro a lot for interviews, for a second angle. Yeah, GoPro is awesome.
What's a good because I know a lot of deer hunters probably listen to this. What's a good mount for like a tree stand? What were you guys using for that? For
We
your
used
GoPro?
the clip. I think it's called like the big clip. I could be wrong, but it's like the big clip, and then it has the balls that you can move all around. It's like 12 inches tall. That's what we used a lot. The other thing we used a lot was just a regular tiny. We hunted out of the saddle a lot, so it was just a clip. It looked like a chip clip, like for a chip bag. It looked like that. You just hooked it onto your tether, which connected you to the tree, and then you just rotated the camera, and it just sat on the tether. And so no matter how you moved, the tether always followed you. That was a cool angle. But those were the two we used the most. I see people like, and I'm not discouraging it, but I see people like hook stuff to their bows and stuff. And the footage is only going to be good for like the seconds you're not moving your bow. Like you usually shoot your bow, and like right when it's like, okay, I want this to be steady, you shoot your bow, and then it's just like shaking all around.
Yeah, super shaky from the shot.
I would try, like, it's definitely a super cool angle, but I would suggest like just put the camera behind you and, you know, capture all sorts of stuff.
Yeah, I think it's important to kind of like put out there kind of what to use, because like I said, when I first started getting involved in it, I'm like, God, what do I buy for my GoPro? What camera to buy, what arm to buy? If I would have known all that, it would have been so much easier. I finally went to carbon fiber stuff instead of Muddy makes some good camera arms if you're gonna leave the base attached to the tree, but if you're gonna move very much, man, it gets heavy, and it'll take up your whole backpack just carrying in some of the stuff. So
the 4th Arrow camera arms are what we always used.
Yeah, I got a new one for my climber this year. It just kind of hooks onto the side. And when I got it in the mail, I was like, I cannot believe how light this thing is and how small and compact it is.
That's right.
What's your favorite thing to hunt? Probably waterfowl.
Yeah, I like hunting Canada geese or snow geese probably. So as you can see, oh, I went the wrong way. That's like probably the coolest hunt I've ever had. We killed a bunch of snow geese, but I don't know. I like hunting geese for some reason.
How often do you do that?
A lot. Like here in a month or so. I won't say every day because we go to school, but every opportunity we possibly get, we'll go. So, like I said, I'll be in Arkansas for 3 or 4 weeks filming every single day. I would go every day if I possibly could.
Would you pick being behind the camera over being behind the gun?
I said on my last podcast I was on, I honest to God think if I had to choose one, I would choose being behind the camera. I don't know. That would be tough. I certainly don't care about shooting as much as I think other people do. So I don't know. But I would, in an ideal world, I would just get to shoot sometimes. And my buddies are real good about that. Like what usually happens is I'll film, a good majority of the hunt, and then, we'll be shooting some, and then I'll just pass them the camera, and then I can shoot. So usually as soon as I'm like, okay, we've got enough content for a full video, here's the camera, and then I'll start shooting. So it's nice to have people you can pass the camera off to, because you get best of both worlds.
I mostly hunt by myself. My wife goes a little bit, but sometimes I'm just like, I want to carry a backpack with just camera gear and just film somebody else. I don't know. Sometimes I just get tired of doing both, and I just want to be behind the camera shooting.
It's fun to do both, and I really like that when I was with the hunting public. Like, it's nice to just be able to focus on one. Like when you're hunting, you're just focused on hunting. When you're, filming, you're just focused on filming. That's why self-filming, I'm just like, I don't know. It's just so tough. I love it, but it's tough. So.
I probably should have touched on this a little bit too, because we're talking about self-filming. What do you use as far as like editing software? Do you just use something simple like iMovie, or
I use Adobe Premiere. That's what I learned on when I was with the hunting public. Before, I just used iMovie. I would tell everybody, until you really know you want to make videos, try to find something that's free or 10 or 20 bucks, because you'll find yourself like everywhere you go with videoing, there's more money to be spent. So, I mean, I think Adobe costs 15 or 20 bucks a month, so it can get pretty expensive. So yeah, I would use something that's free. I used iMovie for a while. Used Windows Movie Maker on Windows for a long time, and then I used iMovie. So there's cheap free versions of stuff you can use.
Don't always have to spend money to get.
That's right.
Yeah, I use iMovie. I like it. It's pretty simple.
Yeah.
For anybody that's first getting involved, I mean, you can spend a few hours on there and learn pretty quick and
absolutely
put videos together. For anybody that's not watching on YouTube, we're getting at an hour here, and I won't keep you because I know you're probably wore out from doing the other podcasts. Could you just tell people that are listening from like Apple or Spotify where they can find you on YouTube? Yeah. He posts quite a bit on YouTube, so you guys want to check him out.
Absolutely. For those watching, this is my YouTube channel. GoochieTv is what I am on YouTube. Like Adam said, I post 3 videos a week usually. Hopefully I can keep that up. So post 3 videos a week, and I like to say we waterfowl hunt, but it's all over the board. We coyote hunt, we fish some, we snag spoonbill, we've filmed a mountain lion hunt, we do all sorts of stuff. Anything that we think would be interesting. We got some alligator hunts coming. So anything that we think is interesting that we could do outside, we do. So definitely check us out. My Instagram is Ethan Gooch, Ethan. I always tell people, if you want to get in contact with me, shoot me an Instagram DM. That's the best way to get a hold of me. I answer all my Instagram DMs. There's a couple I've not answered because the people have said something that I don't like, but 98% of them I'll answer, and I'll answer pretty quick. So yeah, just shoot me a message on Instagram if you have any questions. I'll be more than happy to help you.
Do you sell your shirts or any kind of apparel?
Yeah.
Or is that?
I got shirts on GoochieTv.com. We're looking at getting sweatshirts, some lanyards, just some other stuff. So yeah, definitely, if you're interested in supporting the channel, that would be great. Check it out at GoochieTv.com.
Okay, we're going to wrap it up here. So make sure you guys get over to his YouTube and check it out. He's got a lot of good content. I've been watching some of the videos. I scrolled past the frog gigging video because I was watching something else on there earlier, but I'm going to go back and check that out because I don't see very many people doing that stuff anymore. So I want to get caught up on that. Well, Ethan, I appreciate you taking the time. I know you're a busy guy, and
yeah, absolutely.
Like you said, you're doing those other podcasts, and it's getting late here too. So I won't keep you, but I appreciate you coming on and talking deer, and maybe we'll catch up with you later on.
Absolutely. Thank you for having me on.
Yes, sir. Thank you. We'll talk to you soon.